Hey everybody, welcome back to Listography. Jason, Joe, and Krams are here, and today we're bringing you a record review. We're talking about the new Elvis Costello album, Hey Clockface. So Elvis Costello's got a ton of albums. There's a lot that are kind of like sort of studio albums. I guess it depends how you count them. I think this is like his 28th or something. I'm not sure officially what number it is, but he's got a lot. I'm a huge Elvis Costello fan, so I was excited to hear this one. I ranked his albums on the channel by myself a while ago. I know Joe's a big fan as well. Both he and I have had numerous Elvis Costello appearances on our Albums of the Year list. So you have anything to add before we get into the album?
Well, yes, I have Elvis Costello winning 3 years so far on my list, and I'm a big fan. I definitely prefer, I think most people do, his early work up until 1986 is basically his peak for me. But unlike a lot of artists, I enjoy pretty much all of his albums. I really liked Look Now a lot. 2018 could be, we haven't gotten there on our Albums of the Year yet, but that's definitely a contender for me for top album for 2018. I thought it blew me away. So I was really looking forward to see what he was going to do with this one, if it was going to be kind of the same thing or a totally different direction. So definitely been looking forward to this one a lot as well.
I'm coming from a pretty different perspective than you two. I don't know his whole discography. I know probably the first 5 albums. I really like this year's model. I like the other ones enough, but I don't have the same level of enthusiasm. I don't really have any critiques about them. Like, there's nothing that I can say. It just doesn't strike the same chord with me as it does with you guys. However, with this album, obviously I can't compare it to anything like post 83 or 85 on. So it definitely seems kind of brand new to me. And I'd say my immediate reaction is that I at least find it really interesting and intriguing enough to really look forward to doing the whole discography once we redo Jason's list. But for my all-out review, I'm really in between if I like it or not. It's more interesting to me or not. That said, I did listen to it 3 times, once kind of casually. I do think it seems like it's an album that will grow on people the more you listen to it, because it's a pretty complex record.
Yeah, so my initial feeling was that it was kind of a mess, but upon revisiting it, I feel a little less that way. One thing that I think is important to point out is that it was recorded in 3 separate sets of sessions. There were sessions in Helsinki, sessions in Paris, and sessions in New York. The sessions in Paris, I like everything that was recorded during those sessions. They're generally speaking more of the sort of like slower, jazzy ballads, slower tunes. There's 2 tracks from the album that were recorded in New York that are kind of cool. Nels Cline on guitar on them, a little bit more experimental. And then for me, the tracks in Helsinki kind of come in and sort of threaten to wreck the whole thing. Only Elvis playing all the instruments on these tracks, and they are by far my least favorite on the record.
Now, I don't know which ones those are. I didn't get a chance to look to see where each one was recorded, so it makes sense that it was recorded in 4 different places, because there's definitely some pretty distinct styles going on. There's sort of a couple of the jazzy tunes, especially towards the end of the album, that kind of completely ends with a bunch of those jazzier tunes. There's a couple songs on here that remind me of Imperial Bedroom, particularly like I Do. And then there's these weird kind of, it almost sounds like they have like an electronic experimental beat to them. No Flag and Newspaper Pain. And they're weird. Like, I wish there maybe a little more of that sort of harder, more ferocity. The jazzy stuff is fine. Probably have to listen to it a couple more times to really appreciate it. But I don't know, it's hard to like get a hold of it because it's just so all over the place. There's 2 spoken word pieces, which I do not like at all. It always kind of annoys me. I don't like leading off the album with the spoken word as well. That's kind of a come down a little bit, bring down right off the bat. But I think I like the first half of the album a lot more than the second half. But I don't know. It's tough. I see you disagree, but I like the harder stuff that kind of reminds me a little bit more of Look Now and less of the kind of big band, jazzy, soft kind of. I don't know. It's just my opinion. I don't know where each ones were recorded.
No, I'm with you. I was really into the album at first, and even when some of the jazzy stuff got introduced, I was still into it. But then he almost in the second half just completely abandons what was going on in some of the first half of the album, and it really knocks the wind out of it for me. There's a lot of different stuff on here, like No Flag, the first song, well, the second song, but first real song, really kind of cool and guitar prominent. It's got some great lyrics on it. I got no religion. I got no philosophy, just a head full of ideas and words that don't belong to me. Really nice direct. I feel, I like how older artists kind of tend to get less cutesy with their lyrics and just a little more, forlorn and just kind of heartfelt and direct. I like spoken word stuff. That the lead off track, Revolution number 49, and Radio Is Everything. But other than that, I do think there's a little too much of that the slow jazzy Baroque stuff. But some of it I do like a good bit. So, there's not like a particular style that I really like in this album. It's kind of song for song. I don't really like Hey Clockface, How Can You Face Me? I think it was just kind of quirky and weird. The Whirlwind I didn't like at all. I think when he writes songs that that song is written with too much emotion for what I don't think he can really handle. I like when his vocals are a little more subdued, bring out the character and personality that he's got in his chops. I think that one he's just kind of reaching a little bit. And then Hetty O'Hara, I like all the funky, weird stuff like you were talking about, but that one doesn't work for me. So like randomly, some of them don't work, some of them do. So that middle chunk there with those songs, it really took me out of it. And then nothing really brought me back up right after that. Although I did really think The Last Confession of Vivian Whip was beautiful. Maybe my favorite song in the album. Lyrics are great. The instruments are really cool and decorative. Like you, Joe, I don't really know which version of the songs is from each recording session. But, overall, knowing Elvis's other stuff and liking it a lot and not having any exposure to, the newer stuff from like 85, 90 on or whatever, this at least was intriguing enough to me and interesting and different that I would like to go back into it. But overall, I don't know if I can give a thumbs up on it. I'm kind of in between. I think I'm going to go 2.5 stars out of 5.
So I get what you're saying about the liking the rocking songs, but for me, they just have, because it's No Flag, We Are All Cowards Now, and Hetty O'Hara. Those are the tracks that were done in Helsinki, and Elvis is, I think, playing the drums and all of the instruments. And to me, the drums are just, there's no groove to these songs. I mean, the guitars sound really cool, and they're actually pretty decently written songs, but they have no feel. There's no like forward momentum to them. I went back and listened to some of Look Now, and I mean, the tracks on there are so good and like have this forward momentum that I'm talking about. They got Pete Thomas on drums. That's fantastic. There's songs on that album that are slow, and Pete Thomas is just keeping a beat on a hi-hat, and it just like pushes the song along. So I think those tracks are lacking a lot of feel for me.
I agree with you only on Hetty O'Hara. That one is kind of alienating, but I think No Flag's got kind of a cool groove to it. It's kind of modern. Its drums almost sound kind of fake on them, but so I get what you're saying, but I think it works on those songs except for Hetty O'Hara.
I also on No Flag, I really don't like that little melodic riff that comes in between each line that he sings. I think it's really annoying. My favorite track on the whole record is The Whirlwind, and I think my second favorite is Byline.
Whirlwind, definitely my least favorite. Byline's fine. By that, I really was kind of uninvested by the end of it.
Yeah, I'm with Kramser on that. Just nothing after Hey Clockface really for me. Maybe Hetty O'Hara was interesting. Last Confession of Vivian Whip maybe, but like towards the end I was kind of just like counting down the minutes, waiting for the album to be over. Like Kramser, I like No Flag and sort of the modern experimental kind of sound. It may not be, the best rock music, or as far as Elvis Costello's discography goes, not, sort of in the wheelhouse, but I at least found myself interested by them and sort of like thinking about the songs. And towards the end of the album, I was just kind of not thinking about the songs anymore. I was just sort of enjoying the jazziness, but not really, like Kram just said, no emotional investment, I don't think, in it.
Yeah, I think some of the end just kind of becomes background music, unfortunately. But like I said, the denser it is and the more you get into it, you can probably find some things that you really like about it. But no, not a lot of curbside appeal for me.
Yeah, I feel like if you guys listen to the record in opposite order, you would enjoy the songs at the beginning more. I think you're just getting fatigued by that point by lack of variety, but I think those are really good songs at the end.
Well, if a frog had wings, it wouldn't bump its ass when it hopped, but you can't have everything. So.
We'll give it another chance at the end of the year. I'm giving it, right now, I'm going to say 3 stars. And that's out of respect for Elvis.
It seems like we're all kind of in agreement that it's a little, disjointed and not really a great listen start to finish, even though we kind of disagree on which parts are the good parts. But right now, and I'm kind of like thinking about the Bruce Springsteen record, and since that's the one we most recently ranked, and I definitely think as an album, the Springsteen one works better, but I have a much greater fandom for Elvis Costello, and I think I would be drawn back to this album more than I would the Springsteen, but I think I'm still going 2.5 on this one.
Yeah, it's a tough rating for me to give it because I am interested in it. And it doesn't sound a lot like a lot of the earlier stuff. So what am I missing in between is like what I'm thinking. It could be cool. And I like them enough to revisit. So got to do it. We'll get to that listography eventually.
Yeah, if it wasn't so long, we would have already done it. But we need to just carve out the time to do it. And but yeah, I'm looking forward to redoing it as well. I think there may be some revisions to my list on that one. I don't know. Compared to his recent output, I mean, I definitely think it's worse than his last one. A little bit weaker.
I listened to Look Now sort of right after Hey Clockface, and then I listened to Hey Clockface again after Look Now, and it made me like Look Now even more. So by comparison, it definitely pales to his last work. It has a terrible album cover too, just grotesque.
Yeah.
I kind of get like it's disjointed and it's Clockface, many different things going on, but there's also kind of a dark side, or not a dark side of that. There's also kind of like a weaker stylistic choice of that, because when you get really into a part of the album that you like and you realize that it's only going to be there for a song or two, it just gets really, it's very dissatisfying. Like I really love the sunken piano and kind of the plotting nature of like We Are All Cowards Now, but that's all you get of it. And I kind of like the what Joe was saying, the modern funkiness of No Flag, but that's all you really get in it. It's a little too much of just like little flyers on his styles, and could be, I think probably lyrically, if I really invested more, it would be a cohesive lyrical album, but as far as the sound goes and the enjoyment of it, it is a little all over the place.
I do want to say before we close out the video, or at least make a point of noting that he's still got a really good voice, and he's a really underrated singer. He's got great control of his voice too. I think he's extremely underrated in that regard.
Yeah, he sounds really good on this. Still has that like really controlled vibrato that he's been using since the 80s, and he still totally nails it when he kind of busts it out on this one. So
yeah, but I still think there's some songs that he writes out of his element on this, at least. I could be wrong about his other works, but like The Whirlwind, I am not crazy about the singing on that one, to be honest. And then Byline is pretty good. It almost sounds like a Joni Mitchell kind of vibe. I mean, overall, I think he's a really good singer, but I think sometimes he's just not getting maybe out of his comfort zone a little bit for me.
All right. So I guess if you've heard this record, let us know what you think of it. Tell us down in the comments below. What would you rank it? How do you think it compares to some of his other recent work and his discography as a whole? Be sure to hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Hit the bell for notifications and check the description for links to all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you give those a follow, and we will see you in the next video.